Good
There
talk.
we go.
Doing good, buddy. I'm actually being mobile right now, so I've got my camera and my microphone off. So
Oh, okay. Sorry, man.
no, you're good. I was just letting you know why actually I don't have my camera and stuff on, so that way I've been taking part of all the panels. So
Oh, okay. What's been
Hi.
good so far?
It's so nice to have you with us, Seamus, and just thank you so much for being part of the Collaboration Comic Con. So would you
Oh
tell
no,
us
it's
who
my
you
pleasure
are?
to be here.
Wonderful. And just for everybody watching, just so you know, you can let your friends know via email if they want to come join the live chat. You can message them with this link via text or email, and they can join for free. If they would like to support Seamus and our other speakers, and also we have a COVID fund, they can either purchase a ticket or they can support us with a donation of any amount to our Patreon on our page. So just thanks everybody for coming, and thank you for being here, Seamus.
No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I think it's great what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you. So would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you like to do?
Well, like everybody right now, what I like to do is pray for this most boring of apocalypses to end. I'm currently in Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is about an hour outside of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada, and I won't say it's grim, but it's pretty eerie, the lockdown and the fact that life as we know it has changed so dramatically. But before all of this, I used to work in politics, which is where I met Sean way back when, Sean Williams, who invited me to take part of this. I used to be a political staffer. And I was also a teacher and instructor with the local university's criminology department, a sessional teacher there. But I'm also an author, which is why you guys were kind enough to ask me to speak here today. I write detective novels. I just have the second of my series that came out last June. The third one I'm planning out right now. The books I write are kind of your classic noirish PI novels. They're about an American private detective who lives in London, England, and of course about all the foibles and bad choices that people in crime books often make. I lived in England for a long time, so it was my way of both kind of paying tribute to the city and also having a ready-made setting that I didn't have to worry too much about.
Oh, that's awesome. So what made you decide to become a writer?
I don't know if anybody decides to become a writer. I think that a lot of really stupid decisions lead up to that point in your life, and all of a sudden there's no way out. Like a lot of people who were told that they're creative or felt the urge, I always wanted to write. I was even lucky enough to be able to make a living with writing. Both I did a lot of public affairs and policy work. I worked as a journalist. I worked in advertising for a while, but I never got around to writing a piece of fiction. And eventually I finally kind of just dug in, and it was a hobby that got really out of hand. My first book was just something I picked away at for a few years. And then you're finished and you don't really know what to do with it. So I gave it to some friends of mine whose opinion I trusted very dearly. And they were kind enough to come back and say, this isn't too terrible. Like, some people would actually maybe read this and not hate it. So with that ringing endorsement, obviously I had the confidence then to press on and try and find a publisher, and much to my shock and awe, I did. I have a publisher. I write for an independent publishing house based in France. They're called Crooked Cat. I want to say shout out to Steph and Lawrence Patterson, who are my colleagues there and have been very supportive. So that's a very roundabout and tongue-in-cheek way of saying, like a lot of people become writers, we just start putting one word after the other, and then sometimes silly things happen to us and we end up getting away with this.
That's great. So, tell us about your books. Like, I know you write crime books, but tell us a little bit. Could you tell us a little bit more about them?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing I said was that I write a series of novels, but I think that it's important to kind of come clean immediately. I never intended to write a series of books. I wrote a book and I said, oh, this is great. If it gets published, great, and who cares? But literally the first thing that my publisher asked me was, would you like to write a series based around these characters in this world that you've created? and I hadn't really thought about it. The book ended in such a way that that door was slightly ajar, if not completely open. Of course, my publisher could have asked me for anything, and I would have said yes at that point. So I was more than happy to agree to these terms when I signed on with them. And the reason that is, is it's sometimes hard for creative people to understand this, but any kind of outlet like this, whether it's film or publishing, it's a business ultimately, and they're putting a lot of time and energy into backing you. And the hard late stage capitalist truth is that series of books sell better, especially genre fiction like crime. So that's how I ended up trying to continue writing more stories about these characters in this world. Because I have an 8-month-old son, and it'd be great if he could continue to do things like eat and survive. So the books are about this guy. His name is Thaddeus Grail. Thaddeus is a private detective in London, England. He's an expat from the United States. He's from Seattle originally. There's certain parts of my life that are kind of borrowed for it, but largely they are the typical chicanery that goes on in crime novels: missing trophy wives, smugglers, illicit affairs, bad choices. Bad choices are the hallmark of a good crime book. And like any crime author, either worth his salt or, in my case, aspiring to be worth his salt, you just take somebody who you hope is sympathetic and interesting, and you make their life a living misery, and hope that the readers stick around to see whether he can overcome that misery or succumb to it. So the first book is about a young woman who goes missing, and at the time, our protagonist works a lot of infidelity cases, which are very lucrative for real-life private investigators. Because by the time someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I think my husband or wife is having an affair," their husband or wife is 100% having an affair. So your job then is just kind of the confirmation of this person's worst held fears. So he's making a lot of money, but he's very bored. So he gets a chance to do a detective case, and from there, his life becomes an absolute living hell, which he survives, albeit barely. And then the second book picks up about a year later. He has a new associate, and they're looking for a wealthy but depressed city banker in London who's disappeared. And he's been brought in privately by the family to help because they can't tell the police everything about what he was up to and why it is that he disappeared. And from there, the necessary complications kind of roll out. So those are the first two. And like I said, I'm thinking about what I want the third one to be right now, working on some other things in the meantime. With all this free time that we're all amazingly tediously stuck with.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it looks like we had some more people come join us. So hi, Michael. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
How is everybody?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. That's awesome.
Good. Yeah.
I intentionally muted myself. I'm just.
Oh, hi, Michael.
Hi. Yeah, 2-second delay. You've got a lag on this wherever you talk from, so we all run into each other. That's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I keep myself muted so I stay out of trouble. But hi from Virginia, and I'm a retired editor, thank God. So I can get back. Anyway, go on about yourselves, and I will watch here in a safe fashion. If you see it disappear, I'm still here.
It's very nice to meet you, Michael.
Great. So where's everybody else from?
Well, Seamus could tell you I'm from Virginia too. So.
Oh, awesome.
Who is that?
That was Sean.
Oh, hi, Sean.
Where are you from, Brian?
I'm located in Vancouver.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
It's beautiful here today. Great golfing weather.
Yeah, if only, right? Brian, did you say you're from Vancouver?
I am.
No, I'm in Abbotsford right now.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Oh.
So you have the same weather then?
Pretty close to it. And I was out for a walk with my son a little earlier, and it's stunning here today.
Is it busy out there right now?
No.
I was just outside here, and I gotta say it's pretty busy.
That's not great to hear.
No.
It's very quiet on the streets here. Very, very
Good.
quiet.
That's good to hear.
I understand that people must be getting fed up with this, but I mean, this is not a good time to this is not a good time to suddenly say, all the things that we've been doing are working, so let's stop doing those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost feels like it could all be wasteful.
Yeah. This bulletproof vest is stopping all these bullets, but it's time to take it off now. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the thinking, apparently, with some people.
So
I'm-
Seamus said Brian is actually an actor in the film industry there in Vancouver, which actually brings me to a question for you. Being so close to Vancouver, and I know you have a lot of friends there as well that are also in the film and music industry. Is there like been any talks or anything that you would actually have a Thaddeus Grill series that would be developed for television or maybe a film series?
That's both a flattering question to think that anybody would want to do anything with my books, but coincidentally a well-timed one, because about a month ago, before all of this started to come crashing down around us, I did actually have a meeting with a producer who was interested in doing some TV work on the novels. So he asked me, can you put together a pitch and a mini Bible and map out how you think that the episodes could break down? And I said, sure, no problem. I'd never written for television before. But again, like anytime, like whether it's a publisher or producer or anybody says, can you do this? You just say yes, and you will then figure it out. Like that's just, you don't go, oh no, I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to let this opportunity slip away. So I did all of that, and I sent it to him, and he came back and he said, nah, that doesn't really seem like my fit. But and when we were talking, I'd mentioned that I used to work in politics, and he said, why don't you write something about that? So that's actually what I'm writing right now. I wrote a pilot episode for a 30-minute dramedy about politics and the people who work in it, and we're putting together something right now, and I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's certainly been a steep learning curve. Writing for novels is a lot different than writing scripts. Novels, you've got a lot of freedom. You can screw around. You don't have to worry about timing it for your commercial breaks. But with TV scripts, especially, it's a pretty rigid format that's got to be followed, and it definitely took me a little while to get used to that. So there you go, Sean. That was probably way more information than you wanted, buddy.
No, there's no such thing as too much information, especially in a panel.
As somebody who hosted town halls and public forums professionally, I politely disagree with your statement.
Well, also too, what's really funny is that you're also a self-proclaimed nerd, and I know that you're like a D&D fan and things like that. Have you ever thought about writing anything along like fantasy or sci-fi? Because I know you're a big fan of both of those genres.
No, I don't know if I ever. You say I'm a self-professed nerd. I would say privately disclosed to close friend nerd. So thank you for outing me there. That was great. That was really.
No, I've actually seen your post. You did it yourself.
I'm messing with you. No, weirdly enough, I don't have any great interest in writing fantasy. My books tend to be pretty short, quick reads, 50,000 words in the low end for a novel. And fantasy books, apparently fans can only get excited about them if they're 800 pages and 12 volumes. So that doesn't seem like something I'm ever going to do. I do have an idea for a science fiction thing. I remember trying to pitch it to my publisher in between the first two books, and they were very, very much like, that's great, get to work on the second Thaddeus Grill. But that might be something on the back burner. But again, if I was to write like a science fiction story, it probably would just be like a weird crime story that just happens to take place like a few years in the future.
That sounds like a great pitch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if any of you are commissioning, by all means, I hope that Sean is right.
Well, I've read both Napalm Hearts and 10 Grand, and I have to say they're both great books. And, I would love to see those incorporated to sci-fi somehow, a similar storyline.
Well, I mean, I think that if anything ever happened with those books, I prefer if it kept true to the timeline and the events. I wouldn't say that I'm a purist. I'm not like Alan Moore. If you change one word, that's it. Take my name off this. This is a disgrace. How dare you? That's not really going to be my style in any context. I do have an idea for a sci-fi thing, and it's funny because I'm actually just working on a pitch right now. But again, it's, you know, it's a new world, different characters. But of course, it's about like a horrible crime and people's trying to understand it, which, you know, is kind of a universal theme, I think, for a lot of literature, not just crime books or science fiction novels. Something horrible happens, and then we have to read about how that affects everybody else and how they deal with it or don't deal with it. The end. That's modern fiction summed up very quickly. It's the same thing.
So, where do you get your inspiration for your books? Do you like to read like classic crime novels? Or are you more into reading real life crime, or do you just kind of make it up as you go? How does that work for you?
Well, the first book, I had an idea, and the idea was I was really interested in a detective who was doing detective work for something he didn't really like, and had what we call like a real case fall into his lap. And then I thought, well, what's going to be, you know, what's something that most people would be interested in? And so you try to create, you know, a young woman who goes missing. Literally everybody would want that person to be found, or there to be some sort of resolution to that. And it kind of all spun out from there. Now my second book, the inspiration was a bit simpler. It was a contractual obligation. I only had a certain amount of time to write it. So there wasn't a huge amount of, oh yeah, let's storyboard all these ideas and let's write all these deep dive character bios and let's comb all these articles I've clipped through these years to find the one thing. No, it really was a book of necessity. And again, it started off with one really simple idea. What would happen if somebody went missing, and a person that you wouldn't think should go missing, and why would they do that? And then I kind of spun it off from there. The first book was a lot more structured. There was actually like a really tight outline and a map that I eventually ended up abandoning, but it started with a clear blueprint. And the second book was very much sit down and pound it out and edit as you go. And it was tough. It wasn't nearly as much fun as the first one, but at the end, I think that it came out all right. And the people who read it have been kind enough to not openly mock it or burn it in effigy. So, you know, a big win for the arts right there.
That's great. So what advice would you have for writers that are starting out, people that want to start being writers? What advice would you have for them?
Go into an entirely different line of work. Become a chemical engineer. There you go. That's a really good, steady career. You'll make a great living. However, if you think that, and I should point out, by the way, you know, I don't make a living off my books. It's very difficult as a novelist to make a full-time living. You can, and a little bit of luck and a lot of work goes with that if you're someone who's not named Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. But you know, I had a day job. I was a teacher, and then I was a political staffer. You know, I always had something else kind of going on. This was a hobby that got really out of hand. But the reason I ended up doing it was, and I hate saying these kind of things because I sound like hopelessly idealistic and corny. I just really liked writing, and I felt that if I didn't do it, I was going to feel that I'd left something on the table, so to speak. You know, you only get so much time, and you spend a lot of time in this world doing things you don't like to do. So you might as well try to carve out some time for stuff that you actually like to do that you're not terrible at. And that's how I ended up starting to write fiction. And if somebody really wanted to start writing books, because I get asked that question a lot when I do readings or go to events or stuff like that. My friend AJ Devlin here in Port Moody, he's a really well-known crime author as well, just won the Arthur Ellis Award for Best New Canadian Crime Writer. He's always dragging me to all these things like conferences and stuff. And when people ever ask us, you know, oh, how do you get published? How do you be a writer? I tell them, you have to write a book. And there's no magic formula for it. You just have to sit down and keep putting one word after the other. And the problem with that is that lots of people, I'd say lots of people could write books. I'd say there's probably people on this panel right now who could write books better than I wrote. The problem is, you know, are they willing to put time and energy into putting 65,000 words onto paper that nobody might ever look at or want to publish just because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time? You know, we're human beings. We're very driven by incentive. I don't know a lot of us who would do anything for free, and you're sitting down to write a book or a play or a screenplay or a comic book or whatever, you're literally betting that someone's going to take a chance on it. And if you're not comfortable with those odds, then don't do it. because there's a lot of talent that ends up in desk drawers that nobody ever gets to see because, you know, they didn't find someone who took a chance on them or gave them a break. So I would say that if you want to write, you got to be comfortable with the idea of putting a whole lot of work and energy into something that might never ever pay off. And that's a tough sell. Now, if you want to do that, that's great. Knock yourself out. But if you're more comfortable, I don't know, putting little boats in bottles or collecting stamps, that might also be a deeply satisfying hobby without any expectation of financial return or fame.
So, Brian, how do you identify with that as an actor?
Yeah, I don't think I could say it any more perfect than that. You need to love your craft. If you don't love your craft, then you should probably go do something else. For me, as an actor, I'll see, oh gosh, 20 no's to one yes. So yeah, so I just love the process. I love, you know, taking the audition and making something of it and going in there. And for me, I really like people. So I like meeting people. I like getting into the room. I like meeting, you know, casting, meeting the directors, producers, network sometimes, or ad agencies if they're commercials. So for me, I like people. So, you know, those no's don't hurt me as much as maybe some of my other colleagues that I know. But there's there's rough times. There's times where you go, well, what am I doing? Because there's, like you said, there's no carrot, there's no reward sometimes for all of that hard work. So you need to love it, plain and simple.
Sure.
If you love it, if you love your
said,
craft.
You said no to invite colleagues, right?
Sorry?
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Could you repeat that for us, Marcia?
Did we lose her?
Okay.
So that's pretty much, I think, a common theme amongst all artists, whether it be writing, acting, you know, music. So
Sean?
Oh, I think I lost him too.
I was just saying that I think that's the common theme with all artists. You have to really love what you're doing, because sometimes it's such a hard industry. Regardless of what line of art you're in as an artist, that's just something that you know, that all artists face. Whether it be you as a writer, Brian as an actor, a musician. So I think what you said actually applies to all art.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, by the way, Brian, you said that the odds were 20 no's to 1 yes. Like, I take those odds in a heartbeat, man.
Those are my odds.
Yeah, no, those are good odds.
Some people have better odds than that. And some years, yeah, it's not, you know, it's more. So it's every year is different, and every season is different. I don't try to make sense of it anymore. I've been doing it long enough to know that there is no rhyme or reason. Like you said, it's a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work.
Yeah, well, I find that the harder I work, the luckier I get. So.
Yep. Yeah, you can create opportunities. It's, you know, when you put a little bit more work into it, and I find people who really, you know, dive into their material or their profession or their craft, and are passionate. I become passionate. I want to, like, I've already just met you, and I'm already, I want to get you. What are these books? I was writing them down, and, you know, I'm already, you know, going to be reading your work. So when I find people who are passionate, that makes me passionate about what they do.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that you mentioned there about liking people. And I think as a creative, that's hugely important, because, you know, we have this idea of like the solitary artist, and, you know, there's something kind of glamorous and cool, and maybe even a little messed up about being this tortured creative type. But so much of the work that goes into be creative is, can you connect with other people? Are you willing to network? Are you willing to put yourself out there? Are you willing to hustle? And that's a huge block for a lot of people who I've met who want to be writers or any kind of creative field, because those attributes are really more associated with, like, entrepreneurs, for instance. And a lot of creative people aren't naturally entrepreneurial. Like, they really aren't hardwired that way, which is why it's so hard, I think. And I know this for me, which sounds weird because I worked in advertising and politics. I sometimes really suck at promoting my own stuff and getting stuff out there. My publisher tells me all the time, he says, You have to, polite reminder, you need to tell people you're a writer and that we have books and we'd like it if they bought, like, right. So if you don't like people, you're dead before the start. And that writing is a little different in that sense because it's very lonely because it's only you and the words and the page and whatever, and you'll be in the middle of it. And within the span of 2 hours, you can go from, oh, this is really good. And 2 hours later, you're like, I'm a disgrace. I'm a failure. I've let down the entire history of Western literature. I've betrayed the canon. And then you'll give it to someone else. Like, it's not terrible. Like, it might be in a dumpster, but the dumpster isn't on fire. Just go back and rewrite it. There you go. There you go. You're not Thomas Wolfe. You might be Tom Wolfe. There you go. Knock yourself.
Right.
That's really bad. Tom Wolfe actually was a good writer. Apologies to Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yeah. We're not recording, are we?
Yeah, no one's watching this.
Oh, yes, we are. I'm going to try to insert myself for a second. It's the same across all fields. I was in editing. I've been a DJ long ago, did advertising, public relations, every kind of thing in that field. And it's the same intensity with any of these. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't. But generally you serve the folks you serve and you feel pretty good about it. And you
Okay.
put out a lot of energy.
Well, there's somebody
I know
used to be talking, maybe. Okay, now that's the chat. You're in now. Okay. And in the lower right-hand corner.
Hello.
Oh, it drifts. Well, it's okay. I don't know if people
I'm
can hear
join
it.
too.
Sean, I didn't want to step on you either.
Okay, but because I'm saying, it seems like when I start to talk, it stops. Like, I mean, nobody can hear me now, right?
Go ahead.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
You got to mute your microphone, which is up at the top of your screen.
Sean, we can hear you.
Still there, Michael?
That's not me. That's someone else.
Okay.
I'm
Marcia,
here.
Go ahead and mute because they can hear you. The microphone.
we can hear you, Marcia.
Should I? Well, I'm going to step in again for a second because I don't know who's speaking, but nothing else was coming out before. It's by, but I'm in DC, and thank God it's quiet here. I'm about 10 miles south. Nothing's happening, and everyone's staying out off the roads and out of everything as far as I can tell. I was about to say just in all fields that I found across any industry, you've got people that are just locked into, I was just referring to a DJ I know, for example, out in Abbotsford, since you happen to be there. Yep. Curtis Pope, that's country station, depends on what you do. And in Vancouver, JR 95, it's just, it's the same across the board was all I was going to say. And then I was going to sit back again. But I don't want to stop, and I never know if someone else is talking. So I'll back out again.
Okay.
All right, who's next?
I think I've got another question. I know you spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom. Exactly, what was it about the UK that made you set the stories from Tim Grant and Napalm Hearts in the UK?
Well, two things. One, I really, well, for the most part, I enjoyed my time there. And if you ever have a chance to, live and travel and spend a lot of time in a culture or in a place different than your own, I highly recommend this. It's an outstanding experience. But two, and probably more more to the point of your question, whenever you're writing a piece of fiction, setting is really important. And I realized that by putting my stories in London, I'd already saved myself a huge amount of work, because as soon as I say London, England, you're all thinking about Big Ben and the Eye and black cabs and red phone box. Boom, there you go, setting established, nothing to it. Whereas when I decided to make up my own place or put it in somewhere else that wasn't as well known, there's a whole lot of establishment that's got to go on, and frankly, who cares? Like, I'm more interested in the story. I'm more interested in these characters, where it happens. You know, who gives a monkeys, as we would have said back in the UK. So in a way, London was a really effective tool for me, just to quickly establish a setting that was kind of universally known, and then I could just get on to the story. I wish it was a bit more flowery than that. This might be the point where my publisher is texting saying, "You're being painfully blunt."
That is great, because you use a lot of the landmarks in the UK, like Trafalgar Square and stuff like that throughout. And yeah, those are all pretty well-known landmarks for people who haven't even been to the UK. So
yeah, and the fact is, I actually worked in that neighborhood around Westminster, around Trafalgar, around Victoria. So it was quite easy for me to kind of plop my guys in there. So yeah, I mean, if that part rang especially true, it's probably because I tread those stones many, many times over the years that I lived there. I have no plans of changing the location or anything like that. It's been good to me so far. So.
oh, absolutely.
I have a question for our hostess, because she asked us to do a quick round of introductions, but she didn't tell us where she was located.
Oh, I'm near South Dakota. It's really nice weather out today. It's like 70 degrees, so it's crazy. It was snowing 2 days ago.
Okay.
Got about 5 inches, then it melted, and today I was able to go take a walk.
Right. And you have a Guardians of the Galaxy calendar.
Yes, I have my geeky calendar. It's got everything from Spider-Man, Batman, Groot. I'm a total nerd.
Well, you are volunteering with a comic convention, so yes, I think that we're all, I think our nerdish leanings and bona fides are well established by this point.
Well, this has been really great. I'm so glad you were able to come, and
Oh, my pleasure.
just thank you so much, and thank you so much to everybody who came in to tune in and listen to Seamus. And just again, we're gonna just thank you so much, and all the other people that are gonna be here, all our speakers, and our schedules on our website. If you'd like to donate to support Seamus and our other speakers, you can do so. And just thank you so much for coming, Seamus.
Before we wrap up, can I do like a real quick plug?
That would be awesome. If you could tell us where we could find your work and that sort of thing, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm pretty active on social media. So I have an authors page on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. At SG Heffernan is my handle there. I also have a website, SeamusHeffernan.com. Which has some horribly pretentious black and white photography of me, but also has some decent information about how to get my books and stay in touch. You know, I do get questions from people about writing and about publishing. If you have any of those, please feel free to drop me a line or hit me up either on my website or on social. I'll always answer. It might take me a little while, but I will always answer. I haven't left anybody high or dry yet. And, you know, if you're thinking about giving money to me through all of this, don't give it to your local food banks, give it to the Red Cross. You know, support who you want to support. But I'd be flattered if anybody thought about leaving a few shekels for me coming on here and talking about myself. But put your money to work at where the people on the ground are doing the best efforts right now. You know, we all got to try to pitch in and do our part.
Mm-hmm. And Anna, will those links to his website and stuff be actually posted on the Collaboration Comic-Con site?
Yes, we'll post those underneath this video. So if anybody wants to go in and they want to see your book, and they want to see your books, they want to see your website, we'll have those links underneath so that everybody can just go to this video, watch it, and click through. So
that's great. Well, I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much for having me. It's so lovely meeting you. Michael, Brian, Sean, thanks a lot. I think there are a couple of others on the call, but I didn't have a chance to chat with them. And yeah, if you want to find me, they'll have all those links up. Thanks a lot, guys. Stay safe wherever you are.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take it easy.
Bye, guys.